Now, what about those regulatory spillovers? Where do they come from? But the idea is that if the transatlantic trade negotiations give rise to one global standard, transaction costs on the global economy level would be lower for everyone. Because you would produce your washing machine in Cambodia to the same standard than everyone else does in the world, and you could then, without any further friction, access every market to sell your good. Do I think personally whether that is a thing that TTIP will deliver? And I think no. So at the very beginning of this process, I was optimistic about that. But now, I think the optimists have hit realism, and what you see is negotiating trade deals is very, very, very difficult. So what we will get is not global standards out of TTIP, but what we will rather get is what we call, maybe in some areas, mutual recognition of standards. So that means that in certain areas where standards are deemed equivalent, we would accept American products on our markets without subjecting them to further testing. Or we would accept test results from American laboratories. All these things look very nitty-gritty and very small in size, but they sum up to important chunks of economic activity. Now, if we do not have common standards, the question is how would those mutual recognition agreements affect third countries? And that's where we don't have much evidence. We have some evidence, and the WTO has summarized that in one yearly report that points actually to negative effect for third countries, because building standards for a club of countries, for rich countries, may result in standards that are too high, or too ambitious for countries that are in a different state of development. And therefore, if you do not assume these global standards, and if you do not assume that TTIP will give rise to these spillovers, then what you end up in is a map where you do see losers amongst third countries, in particular in developing countries. So some in the European Commission call TTIP a bonanza for the developing world. I do not agree. But I'm not negative about this neither, because TTIP is just one step in a larger agenda. And one should not forget that a lot of other things are going on at the same time. There's even in Africa, one of the big agreements that has been in the press over the last month is the tripartite agreement in Africa. So even the Africans are trying to integrate regionally. So this is a drive that's ongoing. And if you want to see what happens out of all of this to your favorite developing countries, Mongolia or Guatemala or whatever, you have to see the sum of all these things happening. But you also have to see that the dynamics of these many bilateral agreements that are in negotiation also change what's happening at the WTO. We have the chief economist of the WTO here on our table. He will enlighten you on these questions. But that gives me optimism that at the end of the day, when the dust settles, and not only TTIP is done, but the whole series of negotiations are through, we will come up with a map that looks more like the one that Uli showed at the end, where everything's green. Because the experience with free trade overall is overwhelmingly positive. Over the last 25 years or so, liberal trade policies have lifted hundreds of millions of people out of poverty. These are facts, and this is not only China or some places in some countries in East Asia. This also affects countries that are active on the global markets in Africa. This also is true for some Latin American countries. So globalization per se and free markets are a big success. And if the institutions are right, we will see, or we hope, that TTIP is a step towards this map that actually includes then all countries in the world into getting better chances, better productivity, and also better means to cope with the big challenges of time, things like global warming, things like demographic change, where productivity improvements, which are behind these numbers, become truly important. I think I'll leave it there, and I'm happy to discuss with you later. Thank you.